Greetings, this is Studio Chojin Raw. I am Rev.Paul, and this is the Bennett the Sage is Wrong Part 2 wrap-up video. I'm sorry this video is late. Initially, I wanted to put this video out the same week as the Akira video, but, you know, life got in the way and I got sidetracked, so here we are now. Better late than ever. Basically, what I wanted to do was talk about some things I didn't mention in the original video, and maybe give you a little look behind the scenes here. Hopefully that's interesting to somebody. If not, go watch a fucking PewDiePie video or something. I'm gonna do my best to try to make this shit compelling, but I make no fucking promises. So I guess the best place to start is to explain why I chose to do a response to Bennett's Akira video. After I did the Grave of the Fireflies video, I'd gotten a lot of requests to do other responses to Bennett. I had somebody ask me to do a response to his Devilman video, somebody asked me to do a response to his My Hero Academia video, somebody asked me to do a response to his Sonic the Hedgehog video, but out of all the requests I was getting, there were 3 animes that kept coming up. And those animes were Evangelion, Perfect Blue, and Akira. And out of all of those titles, the title I'm most familiar with is Akira. Perfect Blue and Evangelion I haven't watched in a while, so if I was going to make a video about them, I was going to have to go back and rewatch them to refamiliarize myself with them. Plus, Perfect Blue is based off of a book, and if I'm going to make a video talking about Perfect Blue, I feel like there's an obligation for me to read the book. So taking all that into consideration, if I was going to respond to Bennett's Evangelion or Perfect Blue video, there was going to be a lot of prep work I would have to do beforehand. Whereas with Akira, I've seen the movie multiple times, I've read the manga, I'm a big fan of both, I'm a big fan of Otomo's, so it just seemed like the natural choice. Then when I watched Bennett's Akira video and I saw all the problems with it, and I saw he was reviewing a VHS tape, and I saw that he cut out a huge section of his video and claimed it couldn't be re-uploaded, and coincidentally that part he can't re-upload is also the part that makes him look incredibly stupid. When I saw all that shit, I was like, okay, I have to make a video about this because there's a lot of shit to talk about here. And so far the video seems to be doing okay. The people who have seen it seem to be enjoying it, which is cool. I was worried people might not like it. I was worried people would be confused by it or something. I do have to say, it's the most Studio Chojin of any Studio Chojin video. It has the first appearance of the Rotting Dead. It has, you know, random JAV idols. It has references to the Cold World. It has a preview for Killing Time. I was kind of afraid people weren't going to know what to make of all that. Like, people were going to look at it and be like, this is too fucking weird. What is the point of any of this shit? But people seem to be going with it. Nobody's asked me any questions about what all that stuff is about. But what people have been asking me about is, what is the next Bennett video I'm going to respond to? And the answer to that is, I have no fucking clue. I really don't know. That's something I'm going to have to figure out later. Someone actually sent me Bennett's Long Lost Violence Jack video, and I thought maybe I could do like a Studio Chojin Raw where I do like a watch along and I could play the video and give some commentary and, I don't know, make fun of it and talk about how stupid it is. I don't know. That could be cool. Maybe it'd be stupid. I don't know. Maybe I might do that in the next couple of weeks. But as for what will be the next full response to Bennett, I don't know. I don't have any plans right now. At some point, I'll give it some thought, but right now I want to work on other things and I'll figure that shit out another time. I'm kind of even wondering if it's even worth doing a part 3, because in the 2 full responses I've done to Bennett's videos, you could already see a pattern emerging. Bennett doesn't understand subtext, he only understands the plot on a literal level. If characters don't explicitly state what's going on, he's completely fucking lost. He can't be bothered to do any kind of research, or he can't read any source material. It feels like if I did a part 3, I would just be repeating myself. I don't know, maybe it'll be worthwhile, I don't know. I do think it's funny though that Bennett wants to die on this hill about the Akira film not being a good adaptation of the manga, even though it's fucking clear as day that he's never even read the fucking manga. He's gonna make an argument that he has no way of backing up. He doesn't know one way or the other, but it's not gonna stop him from fucking saying it, which is like the height of stupidity. One thing I should have mentioned in my Akira video is, even though the Akira film isn't a great adaptation of the plot of the manga, it is a really good adaptation of the ideas of the manga. Not everything is there, but the idea the manga presents about teenage nihilism, distrust for authority, death and rebirth, the failure of political structures, all those ideas are present in the film. And I think one of the cool things about Akira is it's one of the most punk rock mangas that like ever existed. Akira is basically the world as seen through the eyes of a rebellious teenager. Nobody seems to have any parents, the adults are all idiots, the politicians are all corrupt, everyone spends their time riding their motorcycles, doing whatever the fuck they want to do, and the most powerful person in the world is a little kid. And that feeling of adolescent rebellion that the manga presents is very much an important part of the film. The film captures that feeling of being a carefree teenager with a complete disregard for authority. The cops and teachers in the movie are portrayed as complete fools, and the colonel is a useless bureaucrat who can't get anything done. The only people who have any kind of authority or agency are the teenagers and kids, which ties back in with that idea of death of the old and birth of the new. The adults have fucked everything up, and Neo Tokyo needs to be destroyed so it can be rebuilt by the new generation. And even though that concept is taken a lot further in the manga, the seeds of that concept does exist in the film. I think another big tell that Bennett has never read the manga is he seems to have no understanding of how Otomo handles his characters and their backstory. Bennett keeps bitching about things not being explained, but Otomo is not somebody who gives character details through exposition. Otomo usually explains the characters' relationships with each other through their interactions, and he leaves a lot of the backstory up to the reader or the viewer's interpretation. This is a technique Otomo uses a lot in his other work. I wouldn't consider this a spoiler, but if you're afraid of having Domu spoiled, like cover your ears for like the next 10 seconds. But in Otomo's manga Domu, he never explains the origin of the psychic powers. You just have to accept that for whatever reason, the characters have psychic powers, because the story isn't about how they got those powers, the story is about how they use those powers. And in Otomo's short story Nothing Will Be As It Was, Otomo never explains why the protagonist murders the guy in his apartment. Even their relationship is never explained. We don't know who exactly the victim and murderer were to each other. We have to infer their relationship with the way the murderer interacts with the dead body. And in Akira, Otomo approaches his characters the same way. Take for example the way Otomo handles Kei and Ryu. The exact nature of Kei and Ryu's relationship is never fully explained. There's a line of dialogue in both the anime and the manga that mention Kei and Ryu pretend to be brother and sister. But that's really as far as their backstory goes. We don't know if they really are brother and sister, and we don't know why they would even be pretending to be brother and sister in the first place. In fact, in the manga, there's one scene where Ryu gets drunk and he kisses Kei, and Kei tells Chiyoko that she's in love with him. So it's strongly implied in the manga that they're lovers, but the details are left vague, and Otomo leaves it up to the audience to interpret the exact nature of their relationship, which I think is pretty cool, and it adds a lot of dimension to the characters. Another thing I think is interesting is the brotherly relationship between Kaneda and Tetsuo. Kaneda and Tetsuo fight, but I never get the impression they actually want to kill each other. They fight the way brothers fight, like they get aggressive with each other, but they always fall short of actually trying to kill each other. Take for instance the film's ending sequence at the Olympic Stadium. Kaneda tries to shoot Tetsuo with that fucking badass laser gun, giving the impression that he wants to kill Tetsuo, but when Tetsuo starts to lose control of his power, he calls out to Kaneda for help, and Kaneda looks really fucking freaked out. Then when Tetsuo is absorbed into that energy orb, Kaneda jumps in after him, even though Takashi tells Kaneda if he goes in there, he probably won't come back. At that point, it becomes very clear, regardless of how angry Kaneda may be at Tetsuo, he still cares about him. I think the closest Kaneda ever comes to killing Tetsuo is that part in the manga when Tetsuo becomes the leader of the clowns and he meets up with Kaneda and the other capsules at the warehouse. Kaneda pulls a gun and points it at Tetsuo, but before Kaneda can fire the gun, he hesitates. Then, during Kaneda's hesitation, Tetsuo uses his psychic powers to chuck a fucking forklift in Kaneda's direction. Kaneda then drops to the floor, avoiding the forklift. But as Kaneda's lying on the floor, Yamagata picks up the gun and tries to shoot Tetsuo. But before Yamagata can fire, Tetsuo kills him. At that moment, Kaneda is so filled with rage, he picks up the gun and shoots Tetsuo on the side. And if you look at the characters' faces, they both look really shocked that Kaneda actually fucking pulled the trigger. One little detail I always thought was pretty cool about that scene was when Kaneda picks up the gun, he's not actually picking up the gun himself. The gun is still in Yamagata's hand. So Kaneda manipulates Yamagata's hand and uses Yamagata's fingers to pull the trigger. I always saw that as Kaneda's way of disassociating himself from actually firing the gun. In Kaneda's mind, he didn't shoot Tetsuo, Yamagata shot him. And if the shot killed Tetsuo, it would have been Yamagata's fault. Kaneda on some level knows he doesn't have it in him to kill Tetsuo. So if Kaneda was put in a position where he had no choice and had to kill Tetsuo, he would have to do it in a way that removed himself from being directly responsible. I also regret not mentioning the music to Akira in my original video. In his review of the movie, Bennett just shits on the Akira soundtrack, once again making it very clear what a fucking unaware and uninformed idiot he really is. The score to Akira is considered one of the classic anime soundtracks, and I would even say it's one of the top 10 film scores of all time. The soundtrack was composed by Geino Yamashiro Gumi, which is a sort of quasi-experimental Japanese music group. I would describe their music as like very rhythmic soundscapes. It's the kind of music that works really well if you're fucking strutting through a rainy city, or you're sitting in a fucking desert tripping out on peyote. It's very eclectic is what I'm getting at. And an interesting detail is the music was composed before production on the film even began. So a lot of the scenes in Akira are paced and timed to the soundtrack, which is one of the reasons I think the music works really well in the film. I would say a defining aspect of the Geino Yamashiro Gumi is their use of synthesizers and traditional folk instruments. When you think about the music in other cyberpunk films, they tend to use a lot of synths, and it gives the film a very artificial feeling. Blade Runner is a good example. Vangelis' score gives that film this sort of otherworldly artificial sheen, which works great in Blade Runner, and Akira could have just copied that formula and called it a day. However, rather than make synthesizers the sole focal point of the soundtrack, Akira takes synths and mixes them with traditional Asian percussion instruments, which gives the film this sort of techno-organic feeling, and it makes the film feel really unique. It also makes a lot of sense thematically too, because when you think about Akira, you think about that juxtaposition between Neo-Tokyo and Old Tokyo. Neo-Tokyo is this technologically advanced metropolis, and Old Tokyo is this destroyed, burnt-out city that exists in the shadow of Neo-Tokyo. As I mentioned before, the film is centered around this idea of old and new, death and rebirth. So mixing digital music with traditional organic sounding instruments is a great way to reinforce those ideas. And if you like the music to Akira, I would recommend listening to the other albums by Geino Yamashiro-gumi, specifically Cacophony Rin and Cacophony Gaia. Cacophony Rin is the album that introduced Otomo to the music of Geino Yamashiro-gumi, and it was the album that made him realize they would be the perfect composers for the Akira film. Cacophony Gaia is the album that followed the Akira soundtrack. So when you take those three albums and you listen to them together, it creates this pretty cool trilogy of music. Alrighty, so that's pretty much everything I forgot to mention in my original video and I wanted to mention here. So let's move on to questions from the audience. And I want to thank everybody who sent in questions and participated, because you've saved me the embarrassment of having to pretend people sent in questions and then I'd have to make up shit to ask myself. So thank you for sending in questions. You're awesome. So question number 1. If Kaneda's motorcycle was real and you took it for a spin, what song would you be blasting? Well, Joe Satriani has a lot of cool songs that make good driving music. Summer Song comes to mind. Surfing with the Alien is another good one. There's also a lot of Guilty Gear songs too that make really cool driving music, like Conclusion. But I'm gonna have to go with Crumple Parts 1 and 2 by Buckethead. The reason being is because I think that song has a sense of movement that kind of emulates the feeling of a motorcycle, and I think that song has a grittiness that kind of captures the feeling of Neo-Tokyo. Plus, Crumple Part 2 is just a fucking 30-minute guitar solo, and the longer the guitar solo, the better, if you ask me. So, let's take a listen to Crumple right now. Okay, so question number 2. Have you considered making videos talking about some live action films you like? Yeah, definitely. I plan on making videos on all sorts of different things. I want to do more Godzilla videos, I want to do some videos on games and manga, and there's plenty of regular live action movies I really want to talk about. I also plan on posting more original stuff, like the Rotting Dead music videos, and I have this idea to do these motion graphics, video comics that I think would be really cool. The reason this channel is called Studio Chojin and not Anime Review Central is because this channel is meant to be an outlet for whatever content I want to post. So over time, I want the content on this channel to range from reviews and analysis to weird, trippy, original shit. Question 3. Have you gotten any backlash or been dismissed by anyone? No, not really. People have actually been pretty supportive. I think that's one of the luxuries of being a small channel. When you're a small channel, people are pretty nice to you and they go really easy on you. But I think that changes when you get to become a bigger channel. When you're a bigger channel, that's when people start to turn on you and they're like, fuck this guy, he used to be cool, but now he sucks. But so far, all in all, people have been really cool. I've had a lot of Bennett fans tell me they're fans of Bennett, but they agree with all the points I make in my video, which is great. I guess the closest thing to backlash I ever got was my Razor Fist video. The Razor Fist video had been up for a month, and then a month after I posted it, that's when the Razor Fist fans discovered it. So then there was this 3-day period of Razor Fist fans just tell me how much I sucked. I think that's the worst it's ever really gotten. And now for the last question. When did you first see Akira and what got you into the creator's other works? I first saw Akira on the Sci-Fi Channel on Saturday Anime. Back in the day, the Sci-Fi Channel used to play anime on Saturday mornings, and it was called Saturday Anime, which is why I put that Saturday Anime bumper at the beginning of the video. But that was the first place I saw Akira, and my first experience to seeing Akira was very similar to Bennett's. I had read about it in all the anime magazines, and the anime magazines were always talking about what a brilliant movie it was and how it was a classic film in the cyberpunk genre. So I was really hyped to finally see the movie. Then when I saw the movie, I didn't get it at all, and I was really disappointed by it. A lot of the concepts just went over my head, and I just thought it was weird and confusing. But then as I got older, I revisited the film and I gave it more of a chance. And then the more I watched it, the more it made sense to me. And I started to get more into the themes of the story. And then it became one of my favorite films of all time. And then from there, I started to watch Otomo's other films like Neo Tokyo, Memories, Rojin Z, if you want to consider that an Otomo film. And then after I worked my way through Otomo's filmography, that's when I started to read Otomo's manga. And obviously the place I started with was Akira, and then Akira led me to Domu, and then Domu led me to Legend of Mother Sarah. And then from Legend of Mother Sarah, I started to just like read any kind of Otomo short story I could find, and yeah, I mean, and that's pretty much it. Akira was basically the gateway drug. Akira was basically my Otomo gateway drug. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I got to say. So thank you for everyone who sent in questions. If you made it this far in the video, cool. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to me drone on. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. So until we meet again.